Good morning, guys. It's Bruce over here at Be Cool Radios. Hey, today we're going to do a take 2 on this GE Superbase frequency counter installation. Yeah, I got the face back on. It's looking pretty good. You can see here, worked on those meters. Got them to be the same color. Awesome. Oh, you gotta have some tricks, right? Yeah, this guy's really coming along. But I want to talk a few things. I had some people ask me, hey, how do you get a frequency counter to a PLL02A? Where's the test point? And you know, I showed you guys in my last video where the test point was, but you know, it turned out that wasn't quite right. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about where that test point is. And we'll also talk about how different test points and different radios react differently on these counters. Okay? I'll try not to make this too long. Keep you guys interested, right? It's funny. I was looking over the YouTube results and they tell me how many people watch my videos and who they are, where they are, and how they watch it. And I was kind of shocked to see that most people watch my videos on a phone and not their TV. And I was like, what? Come on, guys. YouTube's on TV. You gotta see these big old radios on a huge screen, on a little tiny phone. Anyway, I know phones are everything these days, but I'm kind of an anti-phone guy myself, to be honest. Alright, I'm going to show you the test manual over here, and we're going to go over a few items here. Okay, in my last video, we hooked it up to these test points here, and they have you adjust them to 20.105, 1035 for lower sideband. Told you to set it to channel 19, and I assumed that, you know, that's what that read on channel 19, but no, it reads this all the time. So I hooked it up to that test point, which was test point 5, right? And yeah, I changed channels. It didn't change. Dull. I went, oh, that's right. There's a trick to these. See, I don't do too many PLL02As, especially with counters. So you come down here, it's telling you to check your truth chart. 37.660 on channel 1. So this is it, but unfortunately it tells you it's on test point 7. Test point 7 is the secondary of a transformer. It's not really a physical pin. There's a couple capacitors that go to this transformer. You can tap off of those capacitors, and I'll show you where I tapped onto it. So if you remember when I put that offset of 10.6 in there, I kind of shook my head, said that don't look right, because the IF on these guys is 10.695, and that should be what the counter uses as an offset. So yeah, I was wrong. That's okay. It leads me into good segue of how to add these counters, because we're going to show you little changes I had to do. That first test point was real strong, so I had plenty of signal. I had to pad that signal down, and I had to isolate this guy because it was screaming into the radio. Well, it turns out the actual test point, which I'll show you right now, is on the bottom side of this radio, is down here by this can. There's a little tab down there, and I solder a capacitor to that, because you don't want to load down these circuits by hooking that counter straight into the circuit, because it will load down those smaller signals. So like I was saying, this first place I tapped into had lots of signal, no worries. But the second place I actually needed, it was pretty weak, and the counter didn't really want to read it. So I had to change my whole philosophy on the counter, because once I hooked it up, it was so sensitive to the whine, it was just bleeding in. I'm like, okay, this is a good reminder on why almost every time I put a counter in, I gotta physically go around and find the best grounds, the best place to put the hots. And you see, initially I'd put the ground to this transformer. This is the input to the DC. It goes through this transformer. I figured that's the best place. It was very quiet, but after I had to change this over, that wasn't good enough. So it turns out I took a wire and I went through this whole unit to find the best ground, and the bottom side too. Turns out it was right here next to this crystal. Once I put the ground here, it just went away. It's like, wow, crazy, right? So that means I was able to tie both grounds and not float the ground like I did previously. Okay, so does that make sense? Yeah, you just have to test to make sure where these connections go to make the least amount of noise. Okay, here's the frequency counter. You can see, let's see here. Is that getting tuned in? Let's see. So I've got that in there. You can see what you want to do if you wire these. Make sure you use small wires. Like, I'll show you what I'm using. I'm using these little tiny wires, a plug like that, because yeah, the wires, you just don't want them to get a mess. And then make sure you tug, if you solder these wires on, make sure you tug those wires good. Make sure you know they're on solid. And then after it's all done, what I do is I put some contact glue in here to make sure they all kind of stick down, and then, you know, a little more secure that way. But there's a few points here you got to be careful with the glue. A, you have to have access to these buttons. And B, this adjustment here, this is a display offset. So if it's off like a KC or two, you can adjust that and get it back on frequency. And this one here, you can see I got it split right here. This is for the sensitivity, to get max sensitivity out of the counter. And I had to play with that to get the counter to read this test point correctly. So yeah, this one was totally different. I actually took the 12 volts and padded it with a 175 ohm resistor and knocked down the voltage just with a simple resistor. Tied everything to ground. So sometimes that works, sometimes it don't. So that's the clue on putting a counter in any radio, really. It takes a little bit of experimentation to make sure those driver noises are out. And you can hear, here's the volume all the way up. Yeah, there's no counter noise in this. And when you hear it, you know it's there. It just drive you crazy. Okay, so there's some technical aspects. This radio is just about there. What do you think? Yep, I think so. Got her all wrapped up, tuned up. This guy puts out about 13-14 watts sideband and 5 watts of AM with good swing. Replace those capacitors over here in the audio circuit as the microphone preamp was shorted out, and that's working great now. Went through all the tune-up procedures using the manual, and these are kind of a complicated circuit. You know, you got the one board here, and then you got the bottom board that has its own test points. Yeah, these are not fun to work on, that's for sure. And over here, I'll give you one last clue. Here's your frequencies out of all of test point 7. So on channel 40, it reads 38.100. And you subtract 10.6 times 5, and that should be 27.405. Okay? Alright. Give me some feedback. What you guys think. This radio is going to be done. I hope to find somebody a good buyer and a good home for this guy. If not, that's okay. It's good enough to be a keeper. I don't have a GE Superbase in my collection. I'm more of a Uniden guy, right? Alright, 73s. Oh, one last thing. You just saw me flip a channel, right? Yeah. Okay, this video is going to get a little longer. Sorry, guys. There's two things you have to understand here. I did put extra channels on this radio, and I used the CB PA switch. So when you go down, you're going to see this guy go up to channel 59. And when the switch is up, it's just regular. So channel 27 becomes 59. You see that? It goes all the way down. Okay. So that makes it easy peasy, simple, just one switch for extra channels. The other thing is this AB switch. Remember I talking about that? Okay, so what I've done is I'll show you the mod I've done. It bypasses this relay because these relays are getting old and you can't clean the contacts. So yeah, I bypass that relay, so it's always going to be one output, and I covered the other output. But I'll show you what you can do, and I'll show you the mod. Okay, on the back side, this is the output relay. You see it down there? So what I've done is added this red wire right here that actually just bypasses the contacts of the relay, so you're not relying on its health. So if the user, whoever buys this radio, wants to go back to AB and have a switch active, yeah, just remove this. You can cut it or unsolder it. I didn't actually change any of the circuit, just bypass that relay. And then I put a cap on the back side. So there's a user out there that really wants an AB output. Yeah, that's easy to put back. But I do this just to make sure you get a good connection to your antenna and you don't fry these finals. Alright. I hope that's enough information for you all to make a decision. Alright, 73 is Bruce. Seattle.